So I am Vanessa Kingori, Publishing Director at British Vogue, and I am delighted to welcome you to a conversation exploring Netflix Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. The film puts a spotlight on one of the most incredible but under-recognized trailblazers of the 20th century. When Netflix first invited me to preview this film, I was blown away, and clearly I'm not alone, judging by the number of awards and nominations that this film has racked up, including 5 Academy Award nominations, which include Best Lead Actress and Best Lead Actor. I am delighted to say that we are joined today by said lead actress, Viola Davis, the first Black woman to win the Triple Crown of acting, the SAG Award, the Golden Globe, and an Oscar for her role in Fences, amongst other awards throughout her very rich career. We're also thrilled to be joined by the film's multi-award winning director, George C. Wolfe, whom Denzel Washington called a genius. And my dear friend, photographer Misan Harriman is also with us. Misan is best known for being British Vogue's first male cover photographer. He is also a big fan of this film, having studied it 7 times and counting. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so George, I'm going to jump straight in and come to you first.
Okay.
Huge congratulations on this beautiful film.
Thank you.
I am in awe of how you presented Ma's story, her complexity, her strength, coupled with her fragility. But I was also wondering why such a pivotal cultural figure, the mother of the blues, hasn't been a household name until this film. You know, August Wilson thought her so significant. She's the only real life figure in his American Century cycle play collection. And clearly in bringing this film to life, you recognize her significance. What do you think it is about her story that's so compelling and important for the moment we're in now?
Well, I think just her story is important because she is crucial to the development evolution of Black American music, which means American music, which means world music. So without Ma, where would we be? So that's one thing. Also, I think I'm in awe of her voice and her talent, and that she was a composer, but also the fact that she had an empire. She had an empire in the segregated South. She owned theaters. She had a troupe that she paid and traveled around with. And as far as her obscurity, there's a Russian proverb, which I completely and totally love, which is, you must support talented people because untalented people will make it without your support.
Oh,
And so,
I
love that. Yeah. And if they're saying that in Russia, okay, back in another century, it definitely applies for the 20s and it definitely applies for now. So that it is easy for certain people and certain talent to be processed into the machine. But when someone is as textured, as complicated, as brilliant, and as much of a, I'm doing the shit my way, it's hard for the machine to absorb that person. So that's one of the reasons why we don't know as much about Ma as we should. But one of the blessings of this film and it being on Netflix is that it's going around the world. So all of that is changing. So, thank God for the technology, but it's the way the world works sometimes. Those who are gifted are not acknowledged, and those with limited amount of something to offer humanity, are celebrated. Hello, there it goes.
I think the world didn't know how to pigeonhole her, basically. So this is the moment. Viola, I want to kind of pick up a little bit on that. Firstly, huge congratulations on all of your nominations and your recent NAACP win. You're obviously going to need to get that award cabinet extended for all the new gongs. We'll talk about the visual transformation in a moment, because I think it's really important. But I think we're all intrigued to hear how you conjure a complex character like Ma so adeptly, just playing on what George just said. Personally, I could see pieces of my life, my peers, my aunt full of frustrated brilliance, my grandmother who picked cotton and was ferociously intelligent community leader, you seem to create a kind of patchwork quilt that produced a kind of nuanced, multi-layered woman, as George described. Where did you look for inspiration?
I look to for inspiration through studying Ma Rainey, who she was, and the contradictions of who she was. She was, going to church on a Sunday and then going to an orgy on Thursday. She was, in a bar, beating up 200-pound men and praising the Lord, the next day. So she was a sort of tangle of contradictions. I mean, she was my palette foundation. So it's not like I was just playing any woman, I was playing Ma. So I had to get as much information as I could about Ma, and then that's limited. And then I had to rely on what all actors have to rely on, what a lot of us don't necessarily tap into, is being an observer and a thief. And what that means is, as you move through your life, you observe life. You soak it up. You soak up the minutia of it. You soak up the big, huge moments of it, and you put it in your lexicon, your sort of bag, your toolkit. And then when you create a character, or should I say a human being, you go to that bag, that lexicon, and you pull out that. And what is in my bag is my life, my Aunt Joyce, my Uncle Ben, my grandmother Moselle, my Aunt Letha, all these people that I've known throughout my life. Some who have the body of Ma Rainey, but more importantly, I didn't wanna, a lot of times as an actor, the business takes over the work.
Yeah.
The business becomes the work. Like, you gotta be pretty. If you're playing a big woman, you gotta be funny. Where's the humor? Where's the funny? And so they sort of sabotage it. They come in and they tell you how you should act, what the audience wants to see. And what happens is it no longer mirrors life. It no longer mirrors a human being. So I'm just very, 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 very conscious of that as an actor, is what is she thinking? What is she feeling? I know it's, for instance, when I was at my dad's funeral, one minute I was thinking about, I'm never going to see him again. And the next minute I was thinking, what am I going to eat for lunch?
We're complex.
Yeah, we're complex.
But it's just interesting because I think so often cinema doesn't give us all of the dimensions, because going back to what George was saying, we're so focused on a singular narrative that you can't let those other sides in. You can't be kind and difficult and all of those things. While we're on that, I think your performance made me think about the difficult Black woman trope, right? And how much time so many Black women spend tiptoeing around, trying to avoid that label when it's usually a fait accompli, right? It's gonna happen anyway. Ma doesn't seem to fall into this trap. So what was it like sort of embracing her defiance?
I keep using the word redefining. I'm actually should stop using that word, because it's not a redefining, it's actually defining. I think also you can live in an opinion. You can live in someone's opinion of you. I mean, white people's opinion of you is you're difficult as a woman. If you voice your concerns, you're overly masculine as a Black woman because you're showing your anger. But we do it too.
Yeah.
Black girl magic, strong Black woman. It's, like Michelle Norris, the famous writer, said, we wear that badge it's an armor, but we're supposed to feel like it's pearls.
It's
So we do it too. I look at Black women, even in Black movies, and I don't know who they are because it's all motivated by fear, right?
Yeah.
It's just like it's really hard to share the honesty of our story with anyone because of the shame factor. Mm-hmm. If I tell people as a mom that I'm not always on top of it, or my kid, didn't make an A on her last test, or she's not going to Harvard, then you don't fit in, you don't belong. So I try not to do any of that stuff. Mm. So you almost have to cut out the outside noise and look and really that is your job as an actor. It's a big thing for life and an actor's courage and comfort can exist on the same plane. Okay, and the courage is to be private in public. So if that camera came into your house and that camera came into your bedroom when you're with your spouse or your significant other, or in your bathroom or with your kid, what would they see? Wow. How would it be filtered? You harness that and you put it in a big old metaphoric syringe, and that's what you inject yourself with. Because Ma is not difficult or whatever. What she is she's reminding you of her worth. Yeah. That's all she's doing. She's not hustling for it either. She's reminding you of her worth. And she's doing that because that's how she survives. It's either that or you buckle under the weight of it, right? And you just sort of die into the graveyard of nobodyism. And she ain't gonna do that. So that's all I try to do. You know what? That's it. I try to tell the truth. I don't think about.
Sounds so easy. But I think there are.
I to say that.
But I would just like to add, but also she's really good. Ma Rainey is really good at what she does. Yeah. And if you're really good at what you do, you don't have any space for mediocrity. So you aren't, it's not vanity when you are protecting
your talent,
the brilliance of your work. It's not being a monster when you go say, no, we ain't doing it that way because that's wrong. So you're honoring, and she says it. Yeah. Ma listens to her heart.
Yeah.
And that's not a sentimental line. That's a line that is about her artistry, her voice, her community, her faith, her God, her irreverence. All of that is mixed in with that. And when she opens up her mouth, that's what comes out. So the ferocity of her intensity is connected to her protecting the journey that she's gone on to become as good as she is.
And what's so interesting, I think, is that we all got that. I just had this moment in my mind where I thought, I wonder if wider audiences watching this will see that, that she has value and she knows it, or will say, why is she being so difficult? But that's the central challenge we have in society right now.
I'll reduce it even more than that. If they look at it and they reduce it because they just feel like she's just a caricature. Not even that she's being difficult, that she's just a sassy cartoon character and they don't value anything that she says. I'm going to take a step further.
I on that note, after seeing it for the 7th time, I realized that.
But did you like it? I'm sorry.
just a touch.
Really.
Finally. I realized it was a feeling that kept coming to me that I wasn't really articulating to myself very well every time Ma was in a scene. And strangely, it was a feeling of safety and calmness. And I think to Toledo and the rest of the guys, you're talking about protecting, but for me, it was the opposite. you know, it was a calmness and safety because I knew that Ma was gonna always take care of business, like a stuttering nephew. Now, from my point of view, what is the dichotomy of that, in the sense of, you're talking about a Black woman who the livelihood of these men, right? It's much more than, you know, is literally due to her, but more than the livelihood, their sense of worth. How did you reflect upon that, looking at the America and the world that we're in today, which in many ways I think isn't so different to the period Ma was alive?
You know, playing Ma, I don't think about that. She's not thinking about that. She's not thinking about their manhood. She's respecting them as musicians, absolutely. She's respecting them as Black men. They look like her. They're all Black. But so this is sort of like me looking at it, and it's Black manhood and Black womanhood, and how it converges together. I hope people understand that. I think that sometimes we feel like we got to choose one over the other, that both were under vicious attacks. The dehumanization process that is necessary for systemic racism is rooted in dehumanizing the entirety of the race. You dehumanize them by, you know, Ma was a big, dark-skinned Black woman. So we have a whole level of invisibility also that, you know, that is rooted in, you're not pretty, you're not valuable, you're chattel, and she was a lesbian. And then at the same time, you know, you have Black men who are looking for some level of autonomy and some level of feeling like they have some level of identity. That's what it is. Identity. You know, in a weird way, I think that, you know, if I were to look at it from a very sort of subjective way, I think Ma does a really friggin' good job with that.
Yeah.
And hustling for that, of reminding people, you look at with Sylvester. It's like, it's not up to me to pay him. You got to pay him, Sturdy Van. Exactly. He deserves it. He came in here, he did his job. He deserves it. And because I'm in charge and he ain't, I guess it's up to me to say something. He deserves it. I think that, you know, and sometimes we have to be reminded of that in Hollywood where we're at, because sometimes, well, even American culture, it's so individual that we forget that you're not just fighting for yourself. You're not just the voice of yourself. You're the voice of, your voice is magnified into, you know, that's why I always talk about legacy, is what you're leaving is a path, you know. But I think she does a really good job. And I think she absolutely respects every member of her band. I think that they're very happy. They're able to make a livelihood with what they do. And I think her fighting for her worth means that she's fighting for their worth.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, which sort of makes her progressive in that way.
I'd like to add one thing, is that I think it's one of the phenomenons of the segregated system in the United States. It built, speaking to what Viola was talking about, it built a sense of really the oppression, the lynching, yes, but it also built this incredible sense of the collective.
Yeah.
Of this incredible sense of the collective and a sense of the responsibility. I remember very specifically, I went to a private Black grade school, and it was instilled in me, anything that I achieved was for the race. I then went to a white high school, predominantly white high school, and all of a sudden it was, oh no, you're just in it for yourself.
Exactly.
And that's something, and whoever that is, not everybody is on the front line. Yeah. Ma happens to be on the front line. You know, somebody else, a man might happen to be on the front line. A child might happen to be on the front line. It switches because whoever has those qualities, that where they say, I'm standing in front and I don't care what happens to me, we're going forward. That's who that person is. And then other people follow behind, and the people follow, and if it's a woman, a man following behind, and he's seeing her, and then when he comes into his own power, he will lead. Or if it's a woman following behind her, she will study what's been happening and then become the lead. And so it's that sense, I think it's a tremendous sense of the collective. And there's only one scene where Ma Rainey does not have a sense of collective, in which she fails miserably, is that she does not share those Coca-Colas. That's all I have to say.
And I don't think Viola did either.
Viola was the community did not exist. I am thirsty and I do not share my Coke.
Let her live.
I will die for you, but you ain't getting this Coke.
I want to talk a little bit more about that collective, actually, from the point of view of Ma's heart seems to be very kind of rooted in the South. But, you know, the film is set in the time where 6 million or whatever it was, Black Americans moved from sort of Jim Crow South to the North as part of the Great Migration. And that's kind of the rich feeding ground for the film's characters, the wider cast that we've been talking about. And although that is a very American history moment, it kind of struck me when I was watching it that they're globally kind of enduring themes. Like in Britain, 70 years after the Windrush, we're still grappling with the legacy. And unfortunately, we still have migrant ships, you know, washing up on shores with people in search of a better life, with ambition, with disillusionment, you know, running through all of this. Did you think about how the characters' different take on this movement might resonate with kind of global audiences and maybe those close to the immigrant experience? Because it certainly resonated with me.
When you're working on any project, you go into a bubble. You go into a bubble so that everybody can feel safe to reveal their most naked selves. And then you're making a series of choices. And then when you start editing it, you go, oh shit, I'm brilliant because this shit's connected to the world. Hell, wow. Oh, I'm humbled by myself. You know what I mean? So all of that comes later. But one of the things that I think is really interesting and fascinating, and I think August was exploring and in many respects in all of his work, but I think it's an ongoing issue with the Black American story and other stories. On one hand, there is the opportunity, the economic opportunities, and then there's the consequences of leaving the land.
Yeah.
The consequences of leaving the land. And those men sit in that basement telling stories about what happened in the South. That space is haunted, that their lives are haunted by their past, because it's where in the South, in the land. It's why I began the film where you see two young Black men running on the land. You think they're running from something, they're running to something. And the South is this place of extraordinary history and texture. It's also a place of extraordinary horror and violation and all these sorts of things. And that's the dynamic. What happened to, it's interesting that Ma Rainey was the first play he wrote, because in many respects, it's I think a lot of the people in Pittsburgh and the rest of the cycles are grappling with what happened, what was the consequence of leaving the land, of losing that connection, and the power that comes from owning and touching and the earth and it being yours.
And it's so interesting. I think, you know, Misan, you can probably speak to this as well. For all immigrants or the parents of immigrants, you know, they are forever talking about returning to, you know, they're forever talking about how ideal and the stories of win, of loss, it never leaves them. And it was so it resonated so beautifully with me, that hankering back.
You know, the issue also becomes, you know, the James Baldwin quote is being African-American is African, which is having no memory of Africa, and American, having no privilege or rights. That, you know, we're not immigrants.
No.
Okay. We're not immigrants. And to say that we're immigrants is to deny a fundamental truth. And, you know, because I'm an actor, I just think of how things resonate personally, not politically. And personally, what I find to be a running theme in a lot of August Wilson is people finding their place in the world, finding themselves. Harold Loomis, you know, just cutting his chest open and smearing the blood on his face, finding himself, who am I? And I think that one of the most, for me, what makes Ma a liberated woman, for me, Viola, is I think I've spent most of my life becoming me.
Yeah.
That's it. Just having, so I could just say, oh, okay. Hi, I'm Viola Davis. I grew up in poverty. You know, I went to bed. I grew up in, you know, I had a father who was an alcoholic, and this is who I am. And I have a great husband, a beautiful daughter, and just sharing my story, being comfortable in it, right?
Yeah. But it took work.
Ma's already there. I think that that's what her love of the South is too, saying that that's who she was. That's where she was born. That's where her family is. That's where her memories are rooted. That's all she's got. And she has, you know, found out at fairly young age that of being honest and saying, shoot, I came up here with all these promises of America, all this. It don't work for me. I don't like it.
I'm going
I'll listen to her heart. It don't work for me. All these things that you say I should have, I should be doing, you can't do, all those things may be true, but it don't work for me. Living in her truth is what she's doing. Finding her truth.
Viola and George, speaking of truth and legacy, in this age of Instagram and TikTok and, you know, fast media, watching this film and understanding the importance of trying to be a custodian of August Wilson's work, how important is it for you both? Because obviously this isn't your first rodeo with the extraordinary archive of work that August has, for the generations that have never really even heard of August Wilson. You know, I'm Nigerian. There are people in Nigeria that are like, this August Wilson stuff, wow, it's really entering me. You know, how important is it for you for this work to have the resources to continue being displayed in the manner that it has been with Fences and Ma Rainey?
Well, this was my first time at the rodeo.
You ride so well, George.
This was my first time at the rodeo. I mean, you know, August and I had a brief encounter in the bathroom at the Goodman Theater in Chicago when he asked me to direct a play of his. And I said, can I read it? And he says, I haven't written it yet. And I said, well, let me read it so I can see if I have something to offer. And then that was that. And then 850 years later, you know,
wow.
Denzel calls me up and said, Ma Rainey. I went, sure. So it was, so I was a virgin, you know, I was a virgin to August. And so it's just been fun exploring and living inside of it and having fun inside the rhythms and enjoying the craftsmanship so it's I guess what I'm saying, I got to experience the joy and the discovery of digging in with the actors and with the DP and with everybody working on the film to try to bring my understanding, to bring my Southernness, to bring my gayness, to bring my I talk and tell too many stories all the time self, to try to bring all, you know, and I had a grandmother who would threaten to call the police on anybody if they looked at me the wrong way. So I understood that powerful force. And at the same time, I also understood that I needed to conquer and define my space when I entered into a white world. Otherwise, I would be destroyed. And so my defiance was crucial to just being alive. So it was fun to find out how much of myself could show up and live inside the work and be there. because some projects, you know, about, you can speak to this, but sometimes you work on a project and you go, oh, they only want 5% of me. And they want 30% of me. Oh, yippee, you know, which is why I've ended up creating a lot of my own work. And so in this case, it was fun just digging in where my southernness and my angry self and my storyteller self and all these other people could show up. And so when that happens, that's a fun and thrilling thing when that happens. And when that doesn't, it's not so much fun. So, you know, I was just happy on a certain level. I was working with fabulous, brilliant people who I also happen to like, which is also very good. But also it was fun at how much of me could show up in the room and how much I could use myself to paint and tell stories. So that was my version of self.
Because really, I mean, at the end of the day, when you die, your stories die with you. They can live in the people who you've left behind, but then they have to have the courage to tell them. And, you know, that's the importance of August Wilson. He is our griot. And as much as we have social media and we have all that information out there, you have a lot of people sitting in the cheap seats. There's not a lot of truth telling out there. Okay, and especially about who and what we are, you know, the minutia of it. August gives us a chance to talk and speak. And he gives us a chance, you know, to tell the truth, even in our ordinariness. Because a lot of times the only stories that seep through with African Americans are the stories that make it in the history books. I remember specifically, and I wish actually I knew the name of this audience member, because I actually would call him out, because I think it was really crappy what he said. I don't think he knew that it was crappy what he said. But I remember after we did the performance and it was a Q&A, he said, I just don't get it. I don't understand why we should even care about Floyd Schoolboy Barton. It's not like he was Ray Charles or B.B. King. So why should I even sit here? And he was white, but it's almost like I have to have permission to know that your story is valuable. Whereas you have Arthur Miller, who says about Eddie in View from the Bridge, who is kind of a raunchy character, very interesting play, raunchy character. And his response to that, Arthur Miller's response to that is, it doesn't matter if he's likable or if you think he's putrid. Something has happened to him and he should be heard.
I think it's so,
that's it.
Yeah, the details that bring these stories to life. We are running out of time, but this is Vogue, and Viola, I haven't had the chance yet to talk to you about the incredible costume and the makeup. We can't go on without. I mean, this was incredible, and it's no surprise that there are a couple of Oscar nominations for those as well. The transformation was incredible. I'm really interested in how you worked with George and the wider team in bringing to life the visual aspect of Ma.
Once again, I always try to work in the realism realm and not the film realm. I didn't want makeup that just looked pretty just so the audience in a really simplistic way could say, oh, it's beautiful, that's it. You know, the makeup is just an extension of the human being. And I'm thinking the lights, I'm thinking about the heat or whatever. And I remember George, when we first did the makeup, which was sort of cute, he said, it's just, I don't know, just too cute, too perfect, but basically fix it. And that's when I had the feeling of Betty Davis and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Oh,
it just,
I didn't know that was one of your references. It so makes sense now. The thin brow, the smudge, it was just incredible.
It's also just, I mean, on a real level, it's just hot.
Yeah, really. Yeah, exactly.
It's hot. It's hot. It's hot.
Yeah.
And
you can feel the heat.
Rihanna hadn't invented Fenty and all the different shades of blackness.
Exactly.
So it's making do and making a statement.
I will not be surprised. We did a cover with Rihanna in 2018 where she had those same thin brows, and you've never heard such a stir like it. I would be absolutely shocked if we don't start to see Ma Rainey trends in makeup. Honestly, this is the way the makeup.
I would love that. A Ma Rainey makeup line. I'll buy it.
Oh yeah.
I love it.
I have to politely beg before we finish, both of you, because I want more of her story, and I feel, you know, that Black Bottom was obviously at, you know, the back end of her life. The idea of on the big screen, how Ma became Ma with you, Viola, is that something that I could ever dream about?
Another Ma Rainey? Like Ma Rainey Black Bottom 2?
No. Black Bottom, the early years.
The early years.
You know, I'm getting a little bit long in the tooth for that one.
Then it'll really be Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Yeah, really. I'll be dancing on the beach.
Exactly. With braids, like what's her face? With braids. Looking like, exactly.
I think people would watch that.
We should go out by just, I guess, asking what, both of you, you know, what do you want the legacy of this film to be? George, I guess you should take this one.
When I was editing the film, and then there was the shutdown, and then all the protests started to happen, and then I was screaming at everybody. I was screaming at Denzel. I was screaming at Netflix. I was screaming, we got to release it now. We got to release it now. We got to release it now. And America being America and the world being the world, racism didn't evaporate this summer. So what it was about and what's at stake inside the film continues to resonate around the world. And so one of the things that has thrilled me to no end, I remember after the first week that it was streaming on Netflix, we had a big call and people were reporting it was these numbers, it was #1 in the US, blah, blah, blah. And its viewership in Brazil at the time, in Brazil and Africa was extraordinarily high. Mm-hmm. That created such an extraordinary sense of joy inside of me because you know, I do theater and you come together and you make something hopefully magical and amazing. And then, and it happens every night for those people who are there to see it, and then it goes away.
Yeah.
And its potency is in its fragility.
Yeah.
That's one of the things, that's why everybody invests their entire being in it, because they sense like some rare insect, this thing that we are making is going to die soon. Yeah. And so the idea that we have all come together, that everybody worked incredibly very hard and very passionately and used their intelligence and their depth and their madness and made something that matters and that it's being spread around the world is a very, very, very glorious and reassuring thought.
And that's a great legacy. Well, speaking of being screamed at, I'm being screamed at to rap. So it didn't feel like nearly enough time. This film was so multi-layered. We could have talked about intersectionality, about so many other things, but we'll leave it there. It's just for me to say thank you all so much for creating the film, for being here today. And I only hope that it continues to win all of the awards. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.